So where do we go next from here? 6 months suspension for Senator Natasha Akpoti, and well, there's a prayer too, which says that if she would apologize, then justice will be tempered with mercy. But let's get more insight into this. One of the big issues in Nigeria today, interestingly and ironically, really, but there is way more to this, lots of implications. And Mukola, and take us through that.
Yes, indeed. Let's get to know what the implications may be in the coming days. And joining us on this particular segment is Mr. Onyekpere. He's the lead director, Center for Social Justice, who joins us virtually from Abuja. And we also have Mrs. Aisha Yesufu. She's an active Nigerian citizen who joins us also virtually from our Abuja studio. Good morning, lady and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm going to start with you naturally, Mrs. Yesufu, on this one. So we saw a representation of Senator Akpoti Uduaghan's petition yesterday, this time around differently signed, and some would say seemingly an acknowledgement that perhaps she's not abreast of the Senate rules. So that alongside a mix of a handling of these matters from the beginning, what would you say how would you assess a handling of these matters?
You know, as a nation, the fact that we're so invested in technicalities and all of that, sometimes certain things are done to challenge certain positions and certain rulings. Why is it that on a situation, I think what the Nigerians should be asking is that why is it that a petition that has to do with something where you feel aggrieved, that you're having to look for someone else to sign it for you? That's the conversation we should be having. Listening to your conversation earlier on, I heard where you talked about having to now jump back, and this is the reality of a lot of Nigerians. But we're okay with that. We move on. Just also to recap the fact that we're talking about this and as what women should be fighting for. This is not about women. This is about a nation. This is about us citizens. The fact that we almost seem to be enslaved in our own country. And there is a pattern. And I think what we need to focus on, we like to major in the minor as a people. Let's focus on the major issue. One is the fact that there is an allegation here, and in the course of all that, I call it a charade. And I think there was one of the presenters who took a word out of my, because I've written it, I was like, the Senate almost seems as if it's a court-like, MiFi-like institution, where anybody who speaks or goes against the institution is immediately suspended. But when they do wrong, they are never suspended. You've never heard of a senator or a National Assembly member being suspended because they did something wrong. It is always when they are either fighting for their rights or on the side of the people that they are always being suspended. Having said that, also is the fact that what should concern us, we should be majoring on right now. And I didn't hear that in the course of the conversation. Maybe when I was thrown off, the Zoom had problem. You guys had talked about it. Why wasn't Senator Akpabio asked to step down for the moment that they were going to do that session? Why was he seated? How do you come? You're the person who is being accused of something, and then you're also the judge on your own matter. In what world does that sound okay? Even if the senators didn't have the courage to ask him to step down, didn't Senator Akpabio have the integrity to excuse himself and say, because this matter, I am a party to this matter, I will not sit on this, I will come down. The thing also we also should be talking about, and I'll round up with this one, for us to focus on the major, not on whether she knows the rush, she doesn't, because if we begin to talk of senators who have done a whole lot that that has not gone with the rules, there are many out there. The thing we should also be asking, why would the Senate have the right to take away something the Constitution has given one? Because becoming a sin, why do they have a right to suspend you from your legislative duties. I understand that you've done something, there should be punishment, you can be suspended from being part of a committee or doing any the other things. But someone was voted by a constituency and they sent the person to the Senate. The Senate, the members of the Senate are not the ones that gave that power to that person, but they have a right to take it away, something that the Constitution has given. These are conversations we should be having. Thank you.
All right. I'm tempted to ask, just before I go to Mr. Onyekpere, if I glean anything from what you have said, is it okay to break institutional rules in the path to advocating for what is right?
It is not okay to break institutional rules. It is okay to challenge institutional rules. There are some of them that you need to bring to the fore. The reasons why rules get better is that there are some rules, when you look at them, they are not just, they are not either not ethical or they just don't make sense. And in challenging them, you get them to be changed. So let me give you an example, and I'm going to go back to the civil rights movement. When Rosa Parks refused to stand up, you understand, it was a rule that whenever you see a white person, there's no seat, you have to give up your seat. When she refused to stand up, that was challenging a rule that didn't make sense. And along the way, this is the conversation we should be having. So it's not, nothing is always written in black and white. Where in the world does it make sense? I have an issue, I have a problem, something has been done against me, and then I need someone else to write a petition on my behalf. I think lawyers call something busybodies when you go and carry something that it's not on your behalf. It doesn't make sense. So certain rules should be challenged, and in challenging them, yes, you do it and say, let's talk about these rules. So not to talk about the technicalities of, oh, whether she understands what she's doing. She was called someone that came in a Supreme Court senator, so she doesn't know this, she doesn't know that. Half of the, in short, 99.9% of the people at the Senate, what do they really know?
All right. I'll take the same question to Mr. Onyekpere. What are your thoughts on Senator Akpoti handling of her case of allegations of sexual harassment against the Senate President? And what are the lessons for her?
The questions you are asking to me, and what so many senators we are talking about on radio and television, is the sheer pedestrianization of a very, very serious national issue. They left the substance of the matter and went into abstruse, nonsensical, like that, say, formalism. How can the Senate display so much impunity writ large? A matter had been taken to court, and the court had given an interim order, gave a return date, and they thought in their own wisdom that they have a right to override the constitutional right of a citizen, of a senator, to go to court to present the matter wherever he feels that his civil rights and obligations have been violated. So what the Senate had done is unconstitutional, is illegal, and the whole way the matter was presented, pedestrianized and discussed, is just the usual old boys club, where they found somebody who they can now think is a stranger. Therefore, he or she must be dealt with to teach him or her a lesson. So asking about Senator Natasha's knowledge of the rules is neither here nor there. That's not the point. Somebody has alleged that somebody sexually assaulted her. Okay? So if that is the case, that is a very weighty matter that does not require the man just sitting down there and laughing and presiding over his own case. Are we primitive? Are we not civilized enough? I am outraged at what has happened, because if we continue going this way, the world is not waiting for us. Sooner than later, already nobody takes us seriously. We are going to be marked as a nation of people who don't use their common sense. So it has nothing to do with our knowledge. It has everything to do with the character and lack of integrity of those who operate in the system and simply want to drown the voice of somebody who raises a dissenting opinion. It is not proper, it is illegal, and it is unconstitutional. Finally, how can you suspend somebody elected to represent a zone for 6 months? Even under their rules and what the courts have said, the highest you could suspend such a fellow is about 2 weeks or thereabout. So who will be speaking on behalf of that zone for the 60 days? Withholding salaries and all this. You could see the punitive backward mentality in how they announced with glee their punishment. Those in favor say aye, those against say it's ridiculous, extremely ridiculous.
All right. Well, Mr. Onyekpere, would appreciate if you just go straight to the question without, denigrating the person or my colleague or the question. I think that left a very bad taste. We can ask the questions based on what the people think, and we appreciate if you answer, without seeming to denigrate our person or the questions being asked. But I want us to move forward in the sense that I think both of you have agreed that there needs to be something done about the standing order, the rule book of the Senate, in that it doesn't allow or provide that channel to allow people who have been aggrieved to really seek redress in that sense. So you have to be a part of that cult in that sense, which means that if you go against it, you might not get redress. You always have to align in that sense. And I want both of you to speak to it. So where do we move on from here? Because it looks like everybody agrees that something needs to be done. But who is going to bail the cat? And I'll begin with Mrs. Yesufu, then come to you, Mr. Onyekpere.
How do we move on from here is to take issues seriously. When he talked about, he wasn't denigrating you. He was just talking about the seriousness of this issue. I didn't say it in the studio. It's not about being denigrating. Our lives as a people, our lives has turned to nothing. We are suffering in our country, and it comes from here. And every day we get mockery from the people. And when we come to media, we're expecting the seriousness of the issue to be taken on. And there's laughter. And so that's it. The questions were more focused on, what Senator Natasha has done. No, that's not it. The question should be on, why do we have this? Someone has come out to talk about sexual allegations.
Well, Mrs.
And we
Yesufu,
live in a country where people
I didn't
are not
sense
protected.
any laughter. I'm not sure if you can
please?
see me, but there's no laughter on my face. So I'm not sure where you got the laughter from, Mrs. Yesufu.
I'm the one. I'm giving you feedback on what I felt from what you said. You guys,
No,
when
you
you
said there was laughter on my face, and I'm putting it to you that there was no laughter on my face.
You can ask
Mrs. Yesufu.
other viewers. And so this is the thing. Let's talk about these things and seriously with the seriousness that is required.
Mrs. Yesufu,
right?
I need you to acknowledge. I need you to
do.
acknowledge that there was no laughter on my face when I asked you the question. So you said there was laughter on my face.
I think so. When you asked, I said when the conversation was going on.
Which of the conversations?
I joined this program before 7. I came on before 7, so I've stayed here for quite a bit, and that's what I'm talking about. And I'm saying right now, we have a Senate where a travesty has just gone on, and as a nation, we're almost like moving it. It's almost like a joke. And so it is not the joke. So I'm saying he's not denigrating you. I'm giving you feedback. If you want us to do the back and forth here, if I need to continue with the question, I would gladly.
No, there's no back and forth here. I just need to put things in proper perspective so people watching will understand what this is about. We're asking you questions. How do we move forward? And that's what the question is.
Yeah,
so I really don't understand the backtracking. And I think this is what will really mess up the conversation if we're not able to tackle the issues as they are. How do we fix the issues in the Senate, in the institutions? Those are the questions, Mrs. Yesufu.
The question, before you ask the question, you talked about that your colleague was denigrated. And I needed to give you context that they weren't denigrated. It was a question that was raised when he said that.
And she didn't smile. She didn't smile when she asked the question. You realize that. There was no smile on her face.
Back and forth instead of focusing on the issue
exactly,
right
so
now.
please answer the question,
In the course of the conversation, we're doing a back and forth. If you would allow me to give you
no, facts just have to be laid on the table, so nothing is misconstrued. That's all.
Exactly the same reason why I needed to give you that. It's not the smile. I said the room, the way it was, as if the seriousness of what we've just witnessed, it's not even here, talk less of on the street as we go on. And I need us to understand, this is a major issue. How do we go on from there? We need to understand there's a pattern. And there was something that was raised earlier on, because remember, there are always remote causes. I told you I've been here 6 before 7. I joined and I've been listening. We heard when former Senator Sheikh Hussaini talked about the fact that he almost got a suspension when he decided to reveal how much they were earning at the Senate. We've seen Senator Ninki, who got a suspension because of the fact that he came out to say that the budget was padded. We've seen other lawmakers who have. And this is it. We need to understand that there is a pattern whenever anybody speaks for Nigeria, stands for Nigeria, or they're fighting for their right, they are being suspended. How do we prevent this? It's for Nigeria to understand that this is not just about the senators that are out there. This is about every one of us. Are we standing to defend these senators? Are we standing to speak on their behalf? Are we standing to say enough is enough? The Senate should not do this. That is the way. It's a message we have to start. Otherwise, we have a court-like, mafia-like institution that punishes anybody that goes against its own rules. Let me give you another example. The other day, we saw the IG of police coming in to present a budget and bringing in something different from what had been given to the other senators. When one of the senators raised that, it was his own colleagues, other senators, that came after him. If we continue to look at those things and we do nothing, then we continue to do it. It is time for Nigerians to stand and call every one of them to order. It might be difficult. Do we need to start a recalling process? Yes, it might look impossible, but just taking on the issue and say, oh, it is what it is, and asking questions on based on, oh, what rule was broken, what rule was not broken, it's not going to get us anywhere. So we need to understand that this happenings, there's a pattern to it, and we need, it is affecting us, it is affecting the quality of governance in our country.
Mr. Onyekpere, let's come to you on this particular issue, and I'd like us to stay on the merit of the conversation. What triggered this was just not adhering to rules. We can't throw that out of the window. Even as at yesterday, she was still sitting down when the Senate president was walking in. They have their rules, they have their rules. So my question is, where do we draw the line between protecting institution and allowing people to have their freedom of expression at the end of the day when there's a conflict between both? You've raised a question that what they did yesterday was in breach of section, I think, 4(8) of the Constitution, and you raised all of these legalese around it. So between protecting institution, which we clearly saw that they dwelt on it yesterday, on that premise they suspended her, and she making a valid, serious allegation that border on civil and criminal nature against the Senate president, and it was thrown out initially because they say it's a subject of adjudication. She said, no, I never filed such shit. Where do we balance? Because that is a core conversation. Just as Mrs. Yesufu has said, something that happened to Mr. Shehu Sani as he tweeted.
Well, let me start by saying that I never sought to denigrate the person or integrity of the interviewer. I was talking about the sheer pedestrianization by the Nigerian Senate of a very serious issue. You see, the way you frame a question will determine the answer you get. The weight of the allegation of sexual harassment, what I'm saying, is far heavier and bigger than simply bringing a petition signed by you when you are the victim, not knowing that somebody else should have petitioned on your behalf. And that's why I use the word pedestrianization. Now, which institution are you protecting? In protecting an institution, you don't validate or ventilate illegality. In protecting an institution, it is not about protecting the present occupant of the seat. It is about the rules, constitutionalism. I would have loved to hear you question about why a matter that went to court, why being sub judice, while a valid order of court had been given, was simply overridden. And they said, go to hell, we don't want to wait for the court order. Is it not part of the reasons that the Supreme Court in the Rivers State case decided because there was a court order which they said the state government did not obey? Why is this different? Why are we asking questions about protecting a system? If a system is bad, it needs to be thrown overboard. If a law doesn't make sense, nobody is bound to obey it. The days are gone when we will be blackmailed. I was an active citizen during the days of military dictatorship. We fought against the rules, which we saw were violative of our personhood, our dignity of the human person. So we were not bound by under any jurisprudential disposition to obey a law which simply denigrates our personhood. So what I'm saying in essence is that if a rule is antithetical to common sense, it's got to be thrown overboard. And there is no question of protecting an occupant of a seat. Rather, we should protect the institution. And grave allegations should not be swept under the carpet under any guise. Because this is not the first time, like Aisha Yesufu said, and this is not going to be the last. If we can't stand up to the system because we simply want to protect an occupant of a seat, then that's too bad.
Okay, let me bring it to Ms. Aisha Yesufu on this one. Same question, because sometimes I think the argument is, but the perception borders around person against institution and all of that. But you raised a very valid point as to the rules. And my interest, especially I'm happy you're a woman, is the public perception that the hallowed chamber is not safe for women. That perception, whether it's right or wrong, is a question of debate. But if we say that, given that we just have 4 women and 105 men, if I flip the page, maybe something different can happen. How do we ensure that we insist as a people that the issues of sexual harassment allegations, for an example, is not tolerated, and there should be a clear-cut rule in the National Assembly as to how to handle it so that women will be further protected? Just let's begin from there first.
So the thing is this: women are not protected in Nigeria, and literally every woman in Nigeria that you see lives with PTDS, and we are always on the edge. Right now, what you see is the fact that we have a lot of sexual allegations around. We have a lot of victims. Now we have a distinguished senator whose voice has been shut down when she has come out to cry, who is actually being shamed both by her colleagues and also some members of the public. So you imagine if a senator does not have the safe space for her to dare to speak out, what then about other women and what they're going through? I think the first thing that we need to see that leads to a place whereby people will begin to think that, oh no, sexual harassment will not be tolerated in Nigeria. You know, we needed to have a place where they will say, even when the Senate president was accused of sexual harassment, you could see something was done. The first thing that needed to be done would have been to say to Senator Akpoti, step down. Step down, let this issue be investigated. Let there be transparent investigation. Let there be independent investigation. Let there be public hearing on this. Let the matter be taken. Let's see what the facts are. But what we see now is that they're shutting down the voices, putting the whole case, pushing it under the table. And this sends a very strong message to perpetrators that, you know, it's a place where you can do whatever you want to do and nothing is going to come out of it. If, for example, the senator is saying this, how many other persons at the National Assembly are being sexually harassed and now they can't speak? Now they've been told if they dare to do anything, this is going to happen. How many other women or sometimes even men, because sexual harassment goes either way. It's a matter of power. People who feel they're in power, they can do and undo. How many other victims do we have all across Nigeria who are going through this? So that's why, for me, when we make this issue about some following rule and not following rule, that's not the crux of the matter.
That's something to consider.
That there's a sexual harassment allegation against the Senate president.
Indeed.
And there was no need for him to sit and judge on a matter that concerned him in the manner that they did, the charade we saw yesterday.
Indeed, you're right on the money, Mrs. Yesufu. That's something to consider, the possibility that many more are going through this, and because of fear of persecution, they're unable to speak up. But I'm glad you talked about having joined in on the program before 7, and you heard much of the conversation. But if you did, then you would have also noted that we covered much of the ground, talking about the relativism of sexual harassment, why some of her colleagues did not sign the petition on her behalf. And indeed, the question you asked earlier about whether or not we asked if the Senate president should recuse himself, that was also covered by my colleague Jeffrey. And I, in fact, also asked, why she didn't get the measure of support required from her female colleagues. So we at Channels Television, we're objective, we're unbiased. We cannot, queue up beside the senator who has made the allegation alone. We have to cover all sides to the story. So I apologize if we did not, put out much of the sentiments that you would rather have heard. So let me proceed with this now. And I'll appreciate it if you
No,
can
let's just
answer
add a bit of an
in
addendum.
60 seconds.
You remember I said at one time the Zoom, I was out of the Zoom. I noted that. So I saw you covered quite a lot, and I did mention when I was speaking that at one time, the Zoom had a glitch, so they had to take us out. We rejoined, and I mentioned that. So there were things that you said. Of course, you did talk about the things around the area, but what has to be said has to be said.
It's just important.
Yes, you guys
it's important
covered,
to put it
the whole
out there.
point, but
that we haven't trivialized the issue.
I did, and I said I wasn't there. I had to go out because of the Zoom distance.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So here's.
I've heard you.
Here's the final poser there. We didn't see. We in fact saw a male senator pleading for leniency for Senator Natasha, and I'm wondering why the female senators, 4 of them, none of the female senators stood up for her by any measure. So what does this say really about that commentary that women time and again try to reduce the impact of, which is why perhaps whether women do not support each other?
If I may come in here, I think that the opposition may not be supportive of such sweeping generalization. It may be for some personal interest, because some of us felt, somehow we are taken aback when we saw a particular female senator who had even been abused by the same system, who had in the past complained, lining up to say as if to say she was using it as an opportunity to get back in the favor of the books of those who run the system. So the fact that none of them spoke up against what was happening is not just evidence that women fight themselves. It's maybe evidence that they are also afraid of being blacklisted, or being threatened, or even being denied their rights if they are seen to be supportive of this one who more or less has gone against the system. So that is my perspective of that. Let's not use that fact to make a sweeping generalization. The system has a big hammer in its hands, and anybody who seems to support may not be hammered immediately. They may be looking for opportunities to hammer that person in due course. And very few persons are interested in positioning themselves for hammering.
All right. And I think that should be the way forward now, how to ensure that the institution alone is not protected, but people are also protected, whether they're minority, the vulnerable, or what have you. Everybody's right should matter. We have to thank you so much, Mr. Onyekpere, Lead Director, Center for Social Justice, as well as Aisha Yesufu. She calls herself an active Nigerian citizen. Thank you so much for your time. Let me say Ramadan Mubarak to you, Ms. Yesufu. Thank you once again.
Thank you.